the world is not just a heterosexual male gaze of a world.
Is really fulfilling, and there are times where I don't find it
A certain
fulfilling.
body image or type or diet was never
I would like to be a
ever
strong
brought up
woman.
to me
I
once
don't
on a
always
feminist film.
feel
No one
it
ever
for
said,
sure.
"Oh, I want you to look like this in terms of your body."
The more representations we
Feminism is
have
about giving women
of
choice.
different types of
Feminism
women,
is not a
the
stick
better.
with which to beat other
I
women
can
with.
also be used as a sparkly object to distract the spirits.
You're like the fifth person that's asking that to me. What is going on? Since when did people start asking each other about
I personally wouldn't enjoy if I was there for gratuity reasons.
First of all, every woman has body worries. I mean, I'm not exempt from
I
that.
always felt like I could say no in like any work situation.
I wear a leather unitard for the most of this film, and I have been for the last 10 years.
Every Marvel character has a defining outfit or look.
Women are portrayed where it's very much ogling at them.
Well, I believe that Marvel women are heavily sexualized in the MCU, but it is getting better.
I mean, a woman's outfit should be appropriate to the character that she's playing and the actions of that character within the film.
I think that female superheroes' clothing is rather unrealistic and over-sexualized because some of the clothing they wear looks like it's not very comfy. A lot of the sort of latex, sort of skin-tight stuff doesn't look very maneuverable, but also doesn't look very warm either. And for certain missions that they go on and fights they go on, warmth would be quite key, and so maneuverability.
For me, it's based on practicality. You wouldn't want to wear something like that. I mean, they might be shooting for 6-7 hours that day. You wouldn't want to be wearing something like that consistently if it's going to feel uncomfortable. Obviously, it needs to be something that stands out, but it doesn't need to stand out for them kind of reasons.
One of the things that frustrates me the most in kind of these scenes is they seem to always want to put women in heels, and it's so unrealistic.
They're not the easiest things to walk in, let alone bloody fighting.
You wouldn't do like a 100-metre sprint wearing high heels, would you? So, well, why would you go about doing like your superpowers and shit like that?
Could we not just use trainers? They're just easier to run in.
I do think women have been over-sexualised in the MCU, mostly because of the term sex sells. In the first appearance of Scarlett Johansson in the MCU in Iron Man 2, she's dressed in very skinny tight clothing.
She's very much dressed to the male gaze
and shows a lot of cleavage and outfits that wouldn't really go with her fighting style.
Which is meant to appeal to Tony Stark, which then works to the rest of the audience. And in a lot of the shots, she's seen in not very many clothing, especially when she gets changed at the back of Happy's car on the way to take on Hammer Industries. She's shown getting changed, which again isn't something that's needed to be seen, but it is for the pleasure of the male audience and potentially for the women audience as well. Her hair being down and not tied up is extremely impractical.
Updo's definitely more practical for fighting, or anything in general, just keeps your hair out of the way. Like there's so much of the start where she's basically just trying to get her hair out of her face, and like I think that's kind of where her pose comes from.
I think it gradually does get better. The start of it does make sense to a point that the character is sexualised. As I said, it is the femme fatale, the spy trying to seduce someone. But after that point, the outfit does not become practical for someone who is doing secret agent stuff.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive improvement, especially in her costume. I think in Iron Man, where she first appeared, it was like the zip was down here, and it was all of the shots were like of from behind or like upwards at her, and it wasn't particularly, it was more just like she is a very stunning woman and we're going to take advantage of that. Whereas in Black Widow, it felt more like they were telling her story, and it felt more empowering to her. I thought that her fighting costume was a lot better and a lot more appropriate to actually fight in.
Well, at least from my interpretations, the outfits, they weren't as sexualised either. There was more focus on like what the person was doing.
I think from the beginning, Yelena was shown as very much not overly sexualized. Like, all of the outfits in Black Widow were very much kind of, I mean, yeah, the white suit was very form-fitting, but it wasn't quite as skin-tight as Natasha's has been. It was more kind of practical, and I think it got even more practical in Hawkeye.
I've only seen Scarlet Witch in one film, and her outfits were a little bit
risky.
Well, they always say, don't they, that if you're going to show cleavage, don't show legs, and if you're going to show legs, don't show cleavage.
Don't show everything.
No, she's probably one of the most sexualised characters I've seen in a long time. You know,
in this day and age when we're trying to go away from it.
When she first started out, there was a lot of chest shown in her first outfit, especially in the very end of Age of Ultron, where she gets another suit. That's very revealing.
I think after that, as she started to get a definitive outfit, it very much shows off the body a lot more than it probably should, especially since she is a teenager.
The first Marvel film that Wanda appears in, she is also kind of dressed more to the male gaze. I think they were over-sexualized, but I think it was to sell it to a bigger male audience to keep money coming in and make it profitable. I think now it's more kind of open to a much wider audience in the sense that they're not as scantily dressed. The costumes actually fit them all the way over.
It does show off a little bit in the series that they have that they could have been worse because they show off what the comic book outfit was, which is so much worse than what we get to see in the MCU, because that was very much for the teenage boy to enjoy.
I definitely think her Halloween costume in WandaVision improved on the comic version, because drawing somebody in a comic strip, you can make them look as you would like. So you can make the outfits more skin tight, whereas in the WandaVision costume, it was a bit of a thicker material that they looked like they used, which covered up more of Elizabeth Olsen. So it was a more practical outfit, but still being comic book accurate.
They put her across as, for a better word, a really badass woman, like someone not to be messed with. So it was almost as though, because she had that much of like an influence, they didn't need to go down like the line of sexualising it.
In the WandaVision series, the suit she gets right at the end is not incredibly revealing, but it's very powerful, which is another kind of attraction.
I feel like Captain Marvel is used as an excuse to represent female empowerment, but they don't do it quite well. It's just like, well, she's a good character, she's a woman, she can represent female superiority, and then there's no kind of realistic element to her. For example, in Endgame, she goes in and then she saves the day. There's no kind of personality to her. She's just used as a tool to represent women in film.
I think some people were frustrated because they've seen this strong character come out of nowhere, and people are thinking, well, there's no story arc, there's no development. But what tends to happen is, because the comic books have been going for such a long time, there's probably hundreds of comics on Captain Marvel, so obviously the intense fans will know all about them, whereas obviously the mainstream fans have got no idea.
Her main character flaw that people get most annoyed about is the fact that she's overconfident in her abilities and that she thinks she's better than everyone else, which is the exact same flaw that the majority of the male Marvel characters have as well, such as Iron Man and Thor, but no one judges them for it.
Captain Marvel goes from pretty much powerless to powerful in a split second. There's not really a complete story arc. But there is also a lot of hatred for the way that the character acts, and doesn't really get away with the same way that someone like Tony Stark would act. That means that a lot of people hate the character based on the fact that it's just probably a female version.
People don't really accept Captain Marvel's behaviour because we didn't learn about her enough, whereas people accept Tony for being arrogant because we know what he's been through. We've been with Tony for however many films, for 6 or 7 films, and we've seen him develop over time.
She's a strong female character. I think the main reason people were upset was that there was no development. There wasn't her sort of gradually earning the power. It was suddenly she's powerful.
And I do think that it is empowering, that film, especially the scene where she takes on her, I guess, mentor. I think it was less her costume and stuff, I think people would have been okay with that had she been more what people would consider feminine in personality, because she's kind of like Tony Stark in the fact that she's got that arrogance and she holds herself with a lot more confidence than a lot of, not that obviously Natasha doesn't hold herself with confidence, because she does, but it's a different kind of confidence. It's more of a, I know who I am, I know my power, I know who I want to be. I don't think that they presented her in the best light because of how quickly they progressed her character.
I think people get more intimidated by confident women.
I think Black Panther shows women being as powerful as possible, probably the most powerful we've ever seen them in the MCU. Okoye, she's just so badass and she's incredibly skilled, doesn't have any superpowers, she's just unbelievably good at what she does and it's just amazing.
From what I've understood from it is a lot of the costume design is very heavily based on African cultures, supposedly extremely realistic to a lot of the cultures that they are mimicking.
The only times that they really are in anything that you could class as revealing is very much the tribal outfits, where they hit really well at making sure it was authentic to an actual African style tribe.
They're not really like running around in like the skin tight outfits that like the Black Widows are. It's a very good balance, I think anyway, between like the female characters and the male characters in like they seem to wear similar sort of clothes.
It's like his sister. She's a brilliant scientist. That shows her being an intelligent human being.
And Shuri especially, I found empowering, because as much as she was wearing the traditional garb, she was sort of a jokey character, very intelligent and had nothing sexualized about her, and I thought it was phenomenal.
Being one of the smartest characters, if not the smartest character we've seen to date, she's not sexualized, she's purely in the story for her intelligence and what she brings to the role of Black Panther as well. The Dora Milaje in there is just giving us it's almost a secret service of all women warriors who are just unbelievably skilled. As we see in the film, they are fantastic and they are there to obviously defend the king and defend Black Panther.
Yeah, they were definitely demonstrated as very strong in that film, strong and very unified.
The Dora Milaje in Black Panther, I think that they look incredible. It's massively empowering to other women. The way that he interacted with them, I also loved, because he was so respectful, and it felt like he never once felt like it was him talking down to them or him kind of demeaning them because they were women, and I absolutely loved that.
I'll tell you what, it would have been more insulting for them to have put men warriors there if in that type of country, I know Wakanda doesn't exist, it doesn't mean there aren't nations or tribes or cultures that don't have female warriors that are that strong.
The female characters particularly in Black Panther are more empowered than they are sexualized.
From what I have seen in Endgame and with Black Panther, the women are on the same level as the men in terms of power and of fighting ability.
The sexualization of characters isn't limited by the age of the characters to a certain extent. It really is across the board.
We live in a world of equality now. It might have taken nearly 100 years to get there. Times have changed and things have got better for women.
Well, there's definitely been a bigger shift in rights. Obviously, there is still the argument that men and women aren't equal, but I'd say they're a lot more equal than what they were, say, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. I mean, God knows a hell of a lot more than 200 years ago.
There will always be people that will sexualise them in their own head or in their own pictures for their own entertainment, gratification, whichever way you want to call it.
Their own little groups and that.
Yeah. So you're never going to get rid of it completely, but if the film industry can temper how it portrays them,
that's a good thing.
It's a good start.
And I think a lot of feminist activists have also massively helped in the sense of making it so that it's more realistic and it's less clothes that are an inconvenience to fight in.
Women are more confident about saying things to directors and costume designers and stuff like that now. That it's like, I'm not a sex object anymore.
People feel more confident now to actually stand up for themselves and say, no, I'm not going to wear that.
You go into the cinema to watch an action movie, not soft porn, shall we say.
Yeah.
It's not for titillation purposes. You're going to watch an action movie where you have the lead is a female character that is kicking ass basically, and women can kick ass just as good as men.